About the writing process. One of the notable things about West Side Story is it probably has one of the shortest books of any major musical, aside from those that are now 90 minutes and they are not 2 acts, and the process has changed. But Arthur's book is very economic. It takes place over the course of 2 days. He figured out a way to edit Romeo and Juliet, not only in today's terms, but in its plotting and changing major things, that it wasn't about 2 aristocratic families, but it was street gangs. The other notable thing is, in West Side Story, all of the characters have names. Up until then, there was a separate dancing ensemble and a separate singing ensemble in Broadway musicals. One of the things that started to change that was 1943 in Oklahoma. So we go back to Oscar Hammerstein, and as Agnes DeMille, the choreographer, was putting Oklahoma together, several of her dancers had names. And though it did still have these separate singing and dancing ensembles. But Arthur's big contribution, besides structuring the book, was inventing a language for the show. And here we go. I needed to flip. He needed to invent street talk that wasn't real life street talk. So an example is in the first scene between the Jets, they use the line, "cut the frabba-jabba," which again is a euphemism for cut the crap or cut the shit. And people didn't swear in the theater back in 1957. And Lawrence also came up with Daddy-O. He knew that cool had really different definitions of that word, but it always sounds contemporary. And let's talk a little bit about the opening of West Side Story, the prologue. Now, there were several songs that were written and not used as the introduction to what's going to happen in West Side Story. And here's an example of a couple of the cut songs. One is called Mix, which again uses the tune of the Jet song, and you can understand why this lyric was discarded. How long does it take to reach the Mellaroonie? Then they came up with another song called Mix. And Mix was another Jet song, and some of its lyrics were, "If you only say one word, we can cut them up. Go ahead and say the word, and we'll shut them up. We can shut them up." And then Riff had a song called "My Greatest Day." And its lyric went, "My greatest day was the day I was born, and the day I was 8, and the day I was 5, and also the day when I first learned to drive."
Oh.
And I mean, that doesn't make sense because it's a street gang, they're in Manhattan, and how would this character even learn how to drive? And then there was another song that they tried called "This Turf is Ours. Draw a big white line with the keep out sign, and they crossed it. This turf is ours. Gonna hold our ground or we'll turn around and we've lost it. So some of this was actually written in Washington, where the show premiered, and they had already written the Jet Song, and they figured out that the Jet Song was the best way to start singing the show, but they didn't have an opening. And so Arthur wrote a one-act play that he presented to Jerome Robbins, and that is what actually became the prologue. He took the scenario that Lawrence had written, and they used Lenny's music, and they came up with this all-dance prologue, which again is kind of a unique way to start a show.